Greetings to Unit 7. This is for our Ahmad Institute Baha'i Theology class. And this is our presentation on the journey to God's presence and who is our divine guide. And our title is, What is a God? What is God? What is our guide? And can God be our guide? So the concept we begin with the whole concept of guides is very frequently seen in many religious and spiritual and mystical systems. In fact, we are often seen as being surrounded by the next world right here and now, with guides to our left, right, above, below, everywhere. And the guardian Sheikh Effendi said it's curious to him why we don't tap into that power more. This little presentation that today, I'm going to go through it quickly because there's a lot to it, but please pause the video if you want to look at any of the exhibits and discuss them further. Comment in the comments, and we'll also have our chat going so we'll be able to answer questions as we go forward. But I don't want to dwell on death by PowerPoint, so I'll try to move fairly quickly through them. I've also taken your suggestions on some of the crawls, slowed them down. I'm not going to be speaking or reading during them, so it's not confusing. Thank you for all your suggestions in the past few videos. So let's get started. This is about the journey from point A to point B today. And life is a journey, and the journey according to the Baha'i faith is the journey from our birth and our spiritual eternal approaching unto God, and our ultimate goal is the divine treasure of the presence and nearness of God, living a God-centered life. And we have this poor Mother Earth because today we are living in a beautiful blue marble planet, our beloved Earth, our beloved Mother, and she's on her deathbed. This is a statement by Baha'u'llah, that our Earth is on its deathbed and we can see it spiraling into oblivion. We have the subjugation of women. We have possibly, potentially, planet-destroying fusion and particle weapons. We're seizing each other's territory. Wars have not started. In fact, the war to end all wars may be beginning. We've got racial genocide, toxic consumption, cruelty to animals resulting in pandemics and many other things, ecological disasters, and the list goes on and on. And basically, this is the opposite of the Baha'i message of racial unity, love for our planet, love for each other, love for God, and fear of God. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful planet, a stunning blue marble in the heavens. That second quote is amazing, because what Baha'u'llah is saying, that our poor Mother Earth is on its deathbed and the physician is here. Our beloved Lord Baha'u'llah is come to save us and save our earth and save our souls. And yet we have to go on a long journey to get to that point of understanding why this particular manifestation is different. Why is the earth spiraling now more than ever before? Is this the end of days? And many of those questions. So starting at point A, Baha'u'llah's central premise of our journey is that this is a treasure hunt, and we have a choice of living a self-centered life, a centered in anything else but God life, and a God-centered life. These are our main choices from point A to point B as we travel through this life. We can make these choices in our love, in our fear, in our motives, in what we are seeking, where, as Jesus said, where your heart is, there will your treasure be. What is our treasure? And there's a promise and a threat and a warning. And we'll get into this a little more on the dangers of the journey, as well as the need for our guide and who our guide is. But as an example, a very powerful example. The Bob says, I beg thee to forgive me, O my Lord, for every mention but the mention of thee, for every praise but the praise of thee, for every delight but delight in thy nearness. You can read the rest. What more greater statement of a God-centered life than that? Basically, all of our life completely recentered in God. Now, there are many types of journeys, but let's just look at the body versus the soul, and then the path from A to B. Our body journey in space is a little dot on a planet. The time is 100 spins around the sun. We die at 10 years old, or 30 or 40 or 80 or 110. But it's fast, very quick, this journey of our body. All the real power we have is to move a few muscles. I mean, you think about it, we don't have to think about atomic physics or use of tools. All we ever do in terms of our bodily power and energy is we move muscles. And from matter, what is our matter? A collection of atoms or a little pile of unstable monopoly money? What are we chasing? What is our goal? Now then, there's a soul journey from self-centered to anything else centered to God-centered, and space is endless divine universes, time is infinitely eternal eons, energy is what Baha'u'llah calls immortal, omnipotent sovereignty. With surrender, he says, I say be and it shall be, thou shalt say be and it shall be, and matter is countless stable kingdoms. He also says myriads of oceans. We'll go through some quick journeys about the path to get our path from A to B started. So it doesn't have to be a long journey. Baha'u'llah says it's only that's only 2 steps away. We take one step and with a second step into eternity. So it doesn't have to be a long, complicated journey. Again, we're on a path, and what is the right path? Baha'u'llah is giving us a big hint there that the right path is the path that leads to complete God-centeredness, our mystical connection with our Creator. So those are a few ideas, inspirational ideas of the trip from A to B in a nutshell, where we're traveling on a new path with a new manifestation. And why should Baha'u'llah be our guide is the question. Where is he taking us, and how can he help us move from a self-centered, science-centered, money-centered, any other centered life to a God-centered life? And then how does that, after seeking first the kingdom, as Jesus said, reunite us with all else, all our other loved ones? This is a topic we had a lot of problem with last time, which is, and I got a lot of comments on this, by mentioning that the soul is able to die. And there's some good news and some scary news about that. There are some very many quotes in the writings that, yes, this is a very important life, and that the fear of God is not only for individual souls, but to transform the planet. The planet needs the fear of God. Otherwise, we're going to have people walking into kindergarten classes and blowing away little kids. I mean, the fear of God is what keeps people, individuals, from doing horrendous things, and dictators and nuclear wars and everything else. It's the love of God and the love of our planet, but it's also having boundaries set by spirituality and ethics. We got a lot of questions and comments from our last video about, and didn't pull any punches, about things like extinction, perishing, etc. The soul is at stake here. And this is not to scare us into thinking that God is some ogre who tortures us for no reason. This is to get us in line, both spiritually and physically. Sugar Fendi says how few people are motivated by love. We all can profit and benefit by the fear of God because it gives us the freedom to know. Now, there's some scary news and some bad news about this, as we said last time, and I'm not going to overdo the bad news, but just let's look quickly at a few of the additional statements about why this is so important. And this journey, like any other journey, also has its stumbling blocks and its perils and its dangers. We see there that in all of the Baha'i writings, there's no independent Satan, devil, it's all self. So we have a choice of a self-centered life, ego-driven life, or a God-centered life. And all of the horrible atrocities we have come down to ego defense mechanisms and these crazy dictators and people blowing up, killing children, blowing up schools. Just the crazy spiral we're seeing right now with this planet has got to do with self versus God. We've got love and perishing, center our thoughts in God, sinking into irretrievable despondency. I promise this is the last one. We'll get positive in a second. Okay, before you send me 20 more. 20 more, don't do this to me. Here's a good one for you. There's always hope, mercy, prayer, and intercession. You asked to see this. Here it is. Concerning your question whether a soul can receive knowledge of the truth in the world beyond, such a knowledge is surely possible. It's but a sign of the loving mercy of the Almighty, even if it has failed to reach that in this world. Spiritual progress in that realm is infinite, and no man, while on this earth, can visualize its full power and extent. The wealth of the other world is nearness to God. So the three ways we can progress other than free will and our actions there are good deeds done in our name by others, the prayers of others, and the mercy and intercession of God. So there is always hope. Now, on the question of the fear of God, before we get lots of other folks saying we want to love God, not fear him, this is what Peerless says. The fear of God is ever been a sure defense and a safe stronghold for all the peoples of the world, is the chief cause of the protection of mankind and the supreme instrument for its preservation. If your car breaks down in a dark night in an abandoned place, and 5 guys come walking up to your car. Do you want them to be atheists or God-fearing people? That's the best way I can say the fear of God is not a terrible thing. It's something that's needed for our planet as well as our individual lives. And it keeps us from doing all kinds of things that we normally might, big and small, may not do. And when we get into the continuous presence of God, He's standing with us all the time. We're in Baha'u'llah's presence, and we ask ourselves, would I, people say, what would Jesus do? Well, the question now is, what would we do if we're standing right in the presence of Jesus? So we got to get moving here. Quickly, our tools, what do we need? This is what Abdul calls the provisions for our trip, for our journey into the next world. And the most important thing we need, of course, is a guide. And we'll see who all our other guides are here, but obviously Baha'u'llah is the guide for this age. And that means all the other things that we have for our journey, our provisions, our plans, our rules, our skills, our virtues, have to be relevant to today's terrain, obstacles, dangers. We mentioned the dangers. It's a whole different world, goals and needs. And a parchment map with a horse and buggy ain't going to get us there anymore. This is a whole different version of what we need for a guide and a Sherpa on this amazing journey. And this is not just for the individual soul, which is most of what we're talking about in the journey, but also humanity itself, a unified planet. So the individual soul has the things it needs, and when all our souls reach the place of a tranquil heart, which is our compass, then we get the kingdom of God on earth with both that destination that's determining our guide. What do we need to unify the planet, and what do we need for our own souls? Now, we can have a timeline personally, in soul and society. What is our progress? How are we doing? What's our to-do list? If our goal is nearness to God, what should we be doing right now? What brings us closer to God in this moment as a society and as a soul? We have a map that unifies the tranquility of the hearts of the whole planet, and then chart on our individual soul progress. So all those tools are things that we have to go from A to B. To wrap up, God has covenant not to abandon us without a divine guide. And Baha'u'llah says, whoso maketh efforts for us in our ways will we surely guide them. It's been long taught in Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, the idea of the covenant of God, that He will not leave mankind alone, that He won't let us stumble and fall, that He will send us guides. And Baha'u'llah has given us, opened a window about the manifestations, about guides that we've never seen before, that is just absolutely amazing. These are 2 major concepts of progressive revelation and cycles of divine cycles or revelation cycles. And what these really are is, of course, all of the different manifestation prophets or guides that come to us for what we need in those times, like Abraham, Christus, Moses, and today, of course, the Baba and Baha'u'llah. And not only do we have new revelations with God's covenant and his promise, He won't leave us alone, but revelations themselves have cycles. So you can see we've had several different maps and journeys and paths. This is also a sine curve. You turn it on its side. So life has its ups and downs, and then you have a secular sweep, which means in economics a big, big, wide sweep. And you'll see that at the end of one revelation, the beginning of the other, a new spirit dawns. The old religion has crashed and burned, and that spiritual system has been taken over by humans, and we get some terrible things happening with it, and a new spirit begins. It reaches a peak of a golden age, which is the prophets and the manifestation and our guides actually guiding us, and then slowly disintegrates over the years. So when we say, well, how does a guide like Muhammad help the planet when people crash planes into buildings in his name? And this is where science argues with religion. Well, that's the downside of a revelation. Muhammad did not say to murder people. In fact, his threats throughout the whole Quran are, you kill somebody and you're in deep trouble in the next world. Your soul is worse than any of these quotes I've shown you today. The death of the soul, essentially. And he has a lot more hell statements than Baha'i faith has. Hell is an inner state of the soul, and we don't have these burning devils and pitchforks in the Baha'i faith. So anyway, that's a quick idea of our map. And obviously the whole bottom line is, who is the guide and what does the guide lead us to in our journey? And it's, if we look at our guides as the manifestations getting us to our final point, then we can see that, like any other journey or objective going from A to B, there are map directions, our central guide, compass, and skills. And if we're cooking a meal, we've got our recipe book as our map, we've got our ingredients and how to combine them, we've got our master chef, time and temperature is our compass, and then our skills are proportioning ratios. How do we combine the ingredients and make a great cake? You're building a house, we have a blueprint, trade lists and cast off, an architect who guides us through the whole process, our compass, our levels, our rules, and our use of tools. And then we have our life, our centering on God. Our map is the scriptures, directions are the laws revealed by our prophet, our manifestation. The manifestation's our guide, and we have confirmations of the Holy Spirit and a tranquil heart as our compass from hour to hour and day to day, and our skills are the virtues and reflections of the names and attributes of God. We are surrounded by all kinds of guides, but our primary guide in this age is God Himself. Towards Him are our busy movements directed, and in Him is our final resting place. So that's our guide, is the reflection, the exact reflection of our God. We can see God equals our guide because this is the Word made flesh developed among us. So really knowing our guide and following our guide is knowing and following God. And finally, most of the world's spiritual systems hold that we are surrounded by guides. And the guardian was often surprised that we don't tap into our guides more often. So we have a primary guide in our prophet, our manifestation, but all day long we are surrounded in prayer and meditation with our loved ones that have gone on before us, and generations of people, folks, souls, perhaps on many different worlds and planets, cheering us on and hoping for our success to get to, and this is where we're close, to point B. We've started out, gone through a journey, needed certain tools. Saving Mother Earth is part of our goal in attaining God's presence and continually moving towards conformance with our guides, exhortations and writings and scriptures. And finally we arrive at point B, which is both a warning and a promise, which is a treasure and ongoing goal. As Guardian says, those who dwell on the benefits or unpleasant things of life are equally doomed. Valhalla alone must be our focus. And then the supreme beauty, joy, paradise of thought, action, vision, fear, love, trust, all part of living a God-centered life. And there are many writings we don't have the time to go over where he says to see with God's eyes, to act with God's action. He begs God, if it be thy will, grant that my movement and stillness may be wholly directed by thee. I have centered all my thoughts in thee. I fear none save thee. He says, those who fear not God fear all things. Those who fear God, all things fear him who fears God. The love of God as our central driving force in all the spiritual worlds. Trust in anything about God will always, anything but God will always be disappointing. Science taken away from God, we have a little side issue on this that you may or may not want to watch, but it's clearly adding God back to science is going to transform our planet in terms of new discoveries, new insights, logic, how we think, what we discover, what we invent, our character, the nature of reality, knowledge, our will itself. All can be centered, and in fact must be centered, in the divine. This is a completely 180 turn from the way our planet has gotten now, where it's trendy not even to believe in God. There's a final, I thank you for taking the time to watch this. There's a final very advanced section here. And if you're not really into science and math and science and religion and that stuff, you can skip it. Like, it's great to put you to sleep if you're tired at night. Many people tell me that about discussions we have, that it's a great somnolescence. You don't have to take a pill. But this is just sort of a little bit of a joke with Dr. Misha, who is our professor at Unit 7 in Baha'i Theology. And I'm calling Dr. Misha's critique of partial reason. And, you know, Baha'is are all about destroying the ego and self. So this is a tease of Dr. Misha. I'm not really saying that he's as smart as Immanuel Kant. I'm actually saying he's smarter. Now I'm in trouble. But, you know, the critique of pure reason. We're saying Dr. Misha came up with the critique of partial reason. I'm going to write a little Kindle book on this that's going to be free that you'll enjoy. But it's Dr. Misha's point, and what his heartfelt, and we all can feel it heartfelt, is where science has gotten to without spirit and without religion. And I'm just using inside the book. I opened the book. Here's our book. I'm just using I'm making an example out of T.M. Luhrmann, and I apologize to her. I'm sorry. She's a very sweet, brilliant anthropologist at the University of San Diego, and I don't mean to be nasty and mean, but you wrote a book called Making God Real, and it deserves some discussion. We're not going to get into a long discussion, but when you take religion out of science, and it's in the name of being objective or having dispassionate observation or being objective and above things, especially in anthropology, it can become a little bit egotistic. And what the premise is in this book of Making God Real is that we can take out things like faith, love of God. We can take all the things about things as they are. And as Dr. Misha's critique is that, look, today science is saying things are all about what can be observed and what can be quantified, and the nature of things doesn't matter. What they are inside doesn't matter. And this is what TM is saying. Teresa's basically saying that we can look at mankind and religion with its rituals and its practices and all the hard work it takes to create God in our minds, which is the reification process, making the things that we have in our minds seem real. And then she says, here's all the effects. It's like an anthropologist has gone to another planet or even on this planet and is studying apes. And religious people, of course, are like apes. We're really dumb, right? People that love God, we're kind of stupid to certain scientists. So let's not worry about what makes you think that and what are things as they are. We don't care about your ontology or your philosophy. We'll show you how you live your life and how you make it seem that God is real in your own minds. And that way, belief, reality, and things as they are really unimportant. We don't have to deal with that. We can just look at all of the rituals and the practices. What do you do all day long to feel this certain way? And what's interesting is that when they say God's just a model, A equals B, then B also equals A, you're doing the same thing, folks. The scientists are adding gods to God, as Muhammad and Baha'u'llah said, by doing the same reification fallacy. Reification, by the way, is the fallacy of thinking that something in your mind is real, is making thoughts as if they were real. So it's really the really creation of reality out of ideas that, you know, even though in Marxism, who uses reification a lot to attack capitalism, he's saying, hey, you have these ideas in your mind, and society and authorities use that to try to tell you that it's real, like things are really thoughts and thoughts are really things. Science does the same thing. We have all through science things of constructs, and when you get into things like supersymmetry, everything is, I mean, there's a statement that, just think of this statement: water has more entropy than ice. This is an axiom or a truth in science. How much reification is that? That water can have more entropy when entropy is a scientific construct, and yet we're saying water has more of it than ice has. We're getting into a real interesting area here. So by accusing spirituality of a reification fallacy, the opiate of the people, this argument is they're guilty of their own accusation. This is Dr. Mises' critique of partial reason. If you jump into actually things as they are and jump more into philosophy and add God back to science, a revolution is at hand, not just an inspirational revolution that God's ideas come up in your dreams and we have an undreamt of society, but we can have the technologies that won't destroy the planet without destroying the planet. And individually, the growth is incredible. Now, this final slide is, I'm not going to take, this is death by PowerPoint if we get into all this, but take a picture of it, stop, and we can discuss it in the comments. Please email me if you have any interest. I'm working on a presentation on computational theology, and this is kind of, whoops, sorry, go the other way. And this is kind of just a beginning look at it, which is the transformation of reification. If A equals B and B equals A, then what is it? Just a matter of spiral dynamics? Is it asymmetry and symmetry? And in truth, both are true. In other words, is reality a mathematical illusion, or is illusion a plan? Is the illusion of life a planned mathematical reality? This gets into Platonic realism, but it also gets deeply into mathematics. It also reinvigorates Gödel, and I won't go into all of Gödel's study notes in terms of how he got to his point of incompleteness, but does adding God back into science result in a God-centered completeness that Gödel missed because of recursion being mistaken for reification and vice versa? And he uses asymmetric arguments to reach symmetry, and this whole logic comes down to A equals B is not B equals A, and that is the symmetric property of mathematics. So we won't get into the depth of the math of this, but it's fascinating. The whole idea of that, of reification and science accusing spiritual people of reification, creating gods with their minds, it's mental idolatry. It's the same phenomenon, reification, if you're making the scientific concepts God, which is what's happening by eliminating things as they are. You look at the planes Béziers and especially the spinors, and especially spinor twisting in mathematics and supersymmetry, and you can see that spin in quantum field theory and the left and the right in the mirror and the whole idea of reflection surrounds all of these topics of Gödel and the mathematics of ontology and reality. Spiral right dynamics with symmetry is what they call an anthropomorphic misidentification, where is it a left, right, or does A actually equal B, or in the reflection, is recursion and reflection, are they different things? So when we get to supersymmetry, why does water have more entropy than ice? Is it random, chaotic, or holistic, or is it in the model itself of science? And is it a reification process? By the scientists saying water has more entropy, they are creating matter out of mind. And most amazingly, and this is, I'm going to end on this because it's crack on the cosmic egg, and this is reward kind of stuff. And if anyone's gotten this far, I thank you for taking the time. And here's a key, an amazing key. What if reification is transformed? And it's not an illusion and a fallacy to create matter with the mind, but it's a step 1, step 2, step 3. We imagine it, and then we make it happen. This is kind of good. We won't get into Marxism, but this is a big part of Marx's whole criticism that ideation becomes ideology. And that is actually a point that Dr. Misha makes all the time. We must have ontology, or it's going to drive the planet to where we see it now. And yet there's a third mystical side of this, which is be and it shall be. Mind over matter. What if reification is not a fallacy and illusion, but what is the divine nature of human beings? What if we think and therefore it is? Not as a philosophy, but as mind over matter, and a power that we have given away by taking God out of the center of our lives. That's just kind of an ending note, that something to ponder and think about. And again, I thank you very much for taking all the time to go through this. See you in the next video.